May 14th, 1998. Foothill Road, Beverly Hills, California. The heavy curtains of the master suite were drawn tight against the blinding Los Angeles sun, creating a twilight that felt eternal. Inside, the air smelled of sterile medical oxygen and the faint, lingering scent of lavender water. In the center of the room, in a bed that seemed far too large for him now, lay the man who had once held the entire world in the palm of his hand. Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board, the voice. But on this Thursday afternoon, the voice that had made millions of women swoon and grown men cry was reduced to a raspy, labored breathing that rattled in his chest. His hands, those expressive hands that used to snap rhythm to a beat only he could hear, were still. They rested on the silk sheets, trembling slightly, not from rhythm, but from a weakness that terrified him more than any mob boss or studio executive ever had. He stared at the ceiling, but he wasn't seeing the painted plaster. He was seeing a cold, gray street in Hoboken, New Jersey, 80 years ago. By the way, tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? Frank closed his eyes, and the silence of the Beverly Hills mansion was replaced by the roar of a distant train and the howling wind off the Hudson River. It was 1925. 10-year-old Francis Albert Sinatra was sitting on the front stoop of 415 Monroe Street, shivering in a coat that was slightly too big. He was rubbing his left ear, the one that had been scarred at birth, the mark that made the neighborhood kids call him Scarface. He hated them. He hated the cold. He hated how small he felt. But then, the front door swung open and she stepped out. Dolly. Natalina Sinatra. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but she cast a shadow that seemed to stretch all the way to Manhattan. She wore a heavy wool dress and the look of a woman who had already fought 3 wars before breakfast. She saw her son shivering, and she didn't offer a warm hug or a cup of cocoa. That wasn't Dolly's way. She grabbed him by the collar of his coat, pulling him up until they were face to face. "What are you doing sitting in the dirt, Frankie?" she snapped, her voice raspy even then, smelling of tobacco and determination. "You waiting for the world to give you a handout? The world don't give handouts to people like us, Italian kids from Hoboken. You gotta take it." Little Frankie looked at his shoes. "They laughed at me, Ma. They said I'm skinny." Dolly grabbed his chin, her grip like iron. "Let them laugh. You listen to me. You got something inside you, Frankie. I hear it when you sing in the parlor. You got fire. But fire don't mean nothing if you don't have the guts to burn the house down." She pointed across the river, toward the hazy skyline of New York City, barely visible through the fog. "You see that? That's where the giants live. One day you're gonna go there and you're gonna make them giants look like ants. You hear me? You're gonna make them. Beg to hear your voice. But you gotta be tough. No tears. Sinatras don't cry in the street." 73 years later, in that dim bedroom in California, a single tear escaped the corner of the old man's eye and rolled into the deep crease of his temple. He quickly wiped it away with a shaking hand. He had kept the promise. Oh, how he had kept it! He had conquered New York, Hollywood, Las Vegas, and the entire world. But now, staring death in the face, he realized the one thing he wanted wasn't the applause. It was to hear her say it just one more time. To hear Dolly say he did good. But Dolly had been gone for 21 years, lost in a plane crash on a snowy mountain, a tragedy that had ripped a hole in Frank's soul that no amount of Jack Daniels could fill. He tried to sit up, but his body betrayed him. His wife, Barbara, was instantly at his side, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed even in this vigil, her face etched with worry. "Frank, honey, do you need something?" Frank looked at her, his blue eyes clouded with confusion. For a second, he didn't know if he was in 1998 or 1958. "Where is she?" he whispered, his voice cracking like dry parchment. Where's Ma? Barbara squeezed his hand, her heart breaking. She's not here, Frank. It's just us. Frank sank back into the pillows. He knew that. Deep down, in the lucid part of his mind that was slowly shrinking, he knew she was dead. But the guilt was alive and breathing in the corner of the room. You see, the story of Frank Sinatra isn't just about the music. It's about a man who spent his entire life running away from the boy from Hoboken, while simultaneously trying to prove to that boy's mother that he was worthy. And now, at the end of the road, the running had to stop. The silence in the room grew heavier. He needed to confess. Not to a priest. He had a complicated relationship with God. But to the memory of the woman who made him. Before we go any further into the darkness of that final night, if you love stories like this, subscribe for new stories so you don't miss the next chapter of these legends. Frank's mind drifted again. This time, to a moment he had never told the reporters. 1944, the Paramount Theater, New York City, the moment the Bobby Soxers riots began. 30,000 teenage girls blocking Times Square, screaming his name until the windows rattled. He was backstage, pacing, chain-smoking, drenched in sweat. He was 29 years old, skinny as a rail, with a bow tie that looked like a propeller. He could hear the roar of the crowd, a sound like a jet engine. It was terrifying. He looked in the mirror and saw the scars on his neck, the acne scars on his cheeks. He felt like a fraud. A fake. Any minute now, they would realize he was just a kid from New Jersey who didn't know how to read music. Suddenly, the dressing room door banged open. It wasn't his manager. It was Dolly. She had pushed her way past 3 security guards and the USAT theater owner. She walked in, looked at him sweating through his suit, and didn't smile. She walked over, straightened his bow tie, and slapped his cheek lightly, just enough to sting, just enough to wake him up. "Stop shaking," she commanded. "They aren't screaming for a scared kid. They're screaming for the king. So go out there and be the king. And remember, Frankie, when you open your mouth, you sing for me. You make sure the people in the back row, the ones who couldn't afford the good seats, you make sure they feel like you're singing right into their ear, because that was us once." Frank had walked onto that stage and unleashed a sound that changed music forever. He didn't just sing notes, he sang longing. He sang the feeling of being lonely in a crowded room. He sang for Dolly. And every time the applause washed over him for the next 50 years, he was really just checking the wings, looking for her approval. But now, in 1998, the music had stopped. The tragedy wasn't that he was dying. The tragedy was that he had lost his voice long before his heart stopped. It started in 1994, during a concert in Richmond, Virginia. He was singing My Way, the anthem, the song that defined him. He reached for the climax, the big note, the "yes, it was my way," and he forgot the words. He stood there, the orchestra swelling behind him, 20,000 people watching, and his mind went blank. Absolute white noise. He looked at the teleprompter, but the letters swam like fish. He collapsed on stage. It was heat exhaustion, the publicist said. But Frank knew. It was the end. The lion had lost his roar. Since that day, he had retreated into the high walls of his compound. He didn't want the world to see him weak. He didn't want them to see the chairman forgetting the names of his grandchildren or struggling to hold a fork. It was the ultimate shame for a man whose brand was total control. Barbara adjusted the blanket. "Frank, the kids are coming," she whispered. "Nancy and Tina are on their way." Frank nodded weakly. He wanted to see them, but there was a deeper hunger gnawing at him. He looked at the nightstand. There, in a silver frame, was a black and white photo of Dolly Sinatra. She was looking at the camera with that fierce, unyielding stare. He needed to tell her something. He needed to tell her that he was tired, that the tuxedo was too heavy now. "Ma," he whispered, so softly Barbara had to lean in to hear. "I tried. I really tried." His mind was playing tricks on him now. The shadows in the corners of the room began to lengthen and take shape. He saw the smoke of a 1950s nightclub. He heard the clink of ice in a crystal glass. He saw the boys. Dean, Sammy, Joey. They were laughing, holding cigarettes, waiting for him at the bar. "Hey, Frank, come on, Pally." Dean Martin's voice echoed in his head, smooth as velvet. Dean had been gone for 3 years, Sammy for 8. He was the last one left. The solitude was unbearable. He remembered the nights at the Sands in Las Vegas, the way he would snap his fingers and the band would stop on a dime. The power. God. The power. He could order a steak at 4 a.m., he could get a president elected, he could stop a fight with a look. But he couldn't stop time. Time was the one mobster he couldn't pay off. His breath hitched. A sharp pain, like a clenched fist, squeezed his chest. Not yet. He wasn't ready yet. He hadn't made his peace. He tried to push himself up, panic flooding his eyes. "Barbara," he gasped. "I'm losing it, I'm losing—" "What, honey? What are you losing?" "Me," he choked out. "I'm losing me." This was his greatest fear. Not death, but erasure. That Frank Sinatra would cease to exist, replaced by a confused old man in a diaper. He remembered the promise to Dolly. Lions don't cry. Lions hold their heads high. He bit his lip, tasting iron. He forced his breathing to slow down. He had to go out like a Sinatra. He had to have class. Even in death, you gotta have class. The hours ticked by. Outside, the sun began to set, painting the Los Angeles sky in hues of purple and bruised orange. It was the kind of sunset he used to sing about in wee small hours. The phone in the hallway rang, a muted, distant sound. The world was starting to find out. Rumors were leaking. The press helicopters were beginning to circle, buzzing like angry flies. Frank closed his eyes and let the memories wash over him. Not the glory this time, but the pain. The fall. 1951. His throat hemorrhaged. His voice was gone. MGM fired him. His agent dropped him. Ava Gardner, the love of his life, was leaving him. He was walking down Broadway in New York, passing the Paramount where he had once been a god, and his name wasn't on the marquee. He saw people walking past him, looking right through him. He was a nobody again. A washed-up has-been at 35. He went home to his apartment, turned on the gas stove, and sat on the floor, ready to end it. He was done. But then, he heard it. Not a voice, but a memory. Dolly's hand on his cheek. The slap. "The world don't give handouts, Frankie. You gotta take it." He had turned off the gas. He had gotten up. He begged for the role in From Here to Eternity. He took the abuse, took the low pay, took the humiliation, and he won the Oscar. He came back. The greatest comeback in entertainment history. He did it because he was terrified of proving Dolly wrong. Now, lying in the bed, he wondered, was it enough? Did he earn his rest? If you are enjoying this journey into the heart of a legend, please subscribe for new stories to help us keep these memories alive. The bedroom door opened. Nancy Sinatra entered. His little girl, the one with the laughing face. She looked older now, her eyes red from crying, but she still looked like the girl he had written Nancy with the laughing face for. She walked to the bed and took his hand. "Daddy," she whispered. "I'm here." Frank looked at her. He tried to smile, that famous crooked smile that had charmed queens and presidents, but he could only manage a twitch of his lip. "Nancy," he wheezed. Was I a good father?" It was the question that haunted him. He had been a great singer, a great lover, a great friend. But a father? He was always on the road, always chasing the next show. He missed birthdays, graduations. He tried to buy their love with ponies and cars, but he knew he wasn't there. Nancy squeezed his hand tight, tears falling onto the silk sheets. Yes, Daddy, you were the best. You loved us. We knew. Frank let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Forgiveness. It was sweeter than any standing ovation. But the chest pain was returning, sharper this time, radiating down his left arm. The room began to spin. The oxygen machine hummed louder, turning into the sound of a brass section warming up. Ba-da-da-da. The opening riff of New York, New York. Barbara, he said, urgency in his voice. I can't breathe. Panic erupted in the room. Call the doctor, get the car, Barbara shouted. The calmness of the vigil shattered. Security guards rushed in. They lifted him, so light, so terribly light, onto a gurney. They were rushing him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. As they wheeled him out of the house, through the grand foyer he had built, past the Picasso paintings and the awards, Frank caught a glimpse of himself in a hallway mirror. He didn't see the old man. He saw the kid in the tuxedo, cigarette dangling, fedora tipped low. The kid winked at him. One last show, Frankie. Make it count. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and red lights. The city of Los Angeles, the city he had helped build into a glamorous metropolis, flashed by the windows. He remembered driving these streets in his convertible, Ava Gardner by his side, the wind in his hair, feeling like he would live forever. Now the lights were blurring into streaks of neon. At the hospital, chaos, doctors shouting, nurses running. Mr. Sinatra, stay with us, Mr. Sinatra. They moved him into the emergency room. Monitors beeped frantically. His heart, that big, bruised, romantic heart that had sung about every heartbreak known to man, was finally giving out. The doctor leaned over him. Frank, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand. Frank looked up at the bright fluorescent lights. They looked like stage lights. He was back at the Sands. The crowd was waiting. The band was holding the note. He felt a strange sense of relief washing over him. The pain was fading, replaced by a warm, golden numbness. He realized he didn't have to fight anymore. He didn't have to be the chairman. He didn't have to be tough. He didn't have to prove anything to Dolly, or the critics, or the world. He looked at Barbara, who was weeping by his side. He looked at the doctors fighting to keep him. And then he saw her, standing in the corner of the emergency room, clear as day. Dolly. She wasn't the old woman in the black dress anymore. She was young, fierce, wearing her Sunday best. She was smiling. Not the hard, ambitious smile of his childhood, but a soft, proud smile he had rarely seen. She held out her hand. Okay, Frankie, she seemed to say, her voice cutting through the noise of the machines. You did it. You burned the house down, kid. You made them listen. Now come on. The pasta is ready, and your father is waiting. Frank Sinatra took a shallow breath. His blue eyes, which had seen everything from the gutters of Hoboken to the White House, clarified for one final second. He looked at his wife. He wanted to say, I love you, but the air was gone. He summoned every ounce of strength left in his spirit, the spirit that had survived the depression, the mob, and the heartbreak. I'm losing, he whispered. It wasn't a defeat. It was an admission of humanity. For the first time in his life, Frank Sinatra allowed himself to lose. He let go of the rope. He stopped fighting the current. The monitor went flat. A long, high-pitched tone filled the room. May 14th, 1998. 10:50 p.m. The voice fell silent. But wait, that's not how the story ends. You see, when a star dies, the light doesn't just go out, it travels. Before we see the final scene, make sure to subscribe for new stories and join our community of history lovers. News of his death hit the world like a physical blow. In New York City, the Empire State Building turned its lights blue. In Las Vegas, for the first time in history, the Strip went dark. For 1 minute, the neon jungle that Frank had ruled turned off its lights in tribute. The casinos paused. The slot machines stopped ringing. Gamblers held their breath. It was the loudest silence in the history of the world. But in the silence, something else happened. People started playing the music. In bars in Tokyo, in cafes in Paris, in apartments in London, and in row houses in Hoboken, the needles dropped on the vinyl. In the wee, small hours of the morning, "Fly Me to the Moon," "My Way." Back in the hospital room, the doctors stepped back. Barbara collapsed into Nancy's arms. The king was dead. But in the ether, in the space between worlds, the show was just starting. Imagine this: the spirit of Frank Sinatra, free from the broken body, free from the dementia and the fear, stepping out of the hospital. He's young again. He's wearing the tuxedo, the sharp black silk one. His cufflinks catch the starlight. He adjusts his cuffs. He touches the brim of his hat. The air is cool and smells of rain and expensive cologne. He walks toward a light, but it's not a heavenly gate. It looks like the entrance to a club. The best club you've ever seen. The marquee is gold, and it simply says, "One night only." He walks through the doors. The room is smoky, warm, and packed. And there they are. Everyone he ever lost. Dean is at the bar, holding a martini, laughing at a joke. Sammy is tap dancing on a small stage. Bogart is sitting in a booth. And at the head table, sitting center stage, is Dolly. She stands up as he walks in. The room goes quiet. The band, Count Basie's band, lifts their instruments. Dolly walks over to him. She doesn't slap him this time. She reaches up, cups his face in her hands, and kisses his cheek. "You did good, Frankie," she says. "You did real good." Frank smiles. The real smile, the one that lit up the screen. He turns to the band. He looks at Count Basie. He snaps his fingers. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The brass section kicks in. The sound is pure, powerful, perfect. Frank walks to the microphone. He grabs the stand, tips it back, and opens his mouth. The voice is there, stronger than ever, rich like dark chocolate, smooth like good whiskey. Start spreading the news. Back on Earth, the funeral was held in Beverly Hills. It was a spectacle, exactly as he would have wanted. Gregory Peck, Tony Bennett, Liza Minnelli, everyone was there. But the most poignant moment wasn't inside the church. It was outside. A group of old men and women, people in their 70s and 80s, stood behind the police barricades. They weren't celebrities. They were the people from the back row, the people Dolly told him to sing to. One old woman held a sign. It was a picture of Frank from 1943, and underneath, handwritten in marker, it said, "Thank you for understanding." That was his magic. He didn't just sing songs, he understood. He understood that life was hard, that love hurt, that 3 a.m. is the loneliest time of day. He took all that pain, all that grit from Hoboken, and he turned it into beauty. He made the lonely people feel like they were part of a club. As the hearse drove away, carrying the body of Francis Albert Sinatra to his final resting place in Desert Memorial Park, a spontaneous thing happened. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They began to sing. Softly at first, then louder. "I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway, hundreds of voices, off-key, tearful, beautiful." Frank Sinatra kept his promise to Dolly. He became a giant. But in the end, he was just a man who wanted to go home. On his tombstone, they carved the words, "The best is yet to come." And maybe it is. Maybe right now, somewhere in the great unknown, the ice is clinking, the band is swinging, and the chairman is finally, truly, at peace. Thank you for listening to this story. If you were moved by the life of Old Blue Eyes, please subscribe for new stories. We have many more legends to explore. But before you go, one last question. When you feel lonely, which Sinatra song do you play? Tell me in the comments below. The show must go on. Subscribe for new stories.